He never expected this night to become the most life-changing moment he would ever live through. It started with a joke. At least he thought it was. The text message had popped up on his phone at 7:42 p.m. 2 nights earlier, while he was folding his 6-year-old daughter's unicorn pajamas, one sock in his hand, stress in his chest, exhaustion in every muscle of his body. Blind date. 5 p.m. She's a mom, don't freak out. His coworker Jason sent it. He rolled his eyes at first. Because blind dates rarely led anywhere, especially for him. Especially now. Especially after everything he lost. But then Jason added another message. She has 5 kids. Military. UNA to meet her. And that part made him laugh out loud. Not in a disrespectful way, but in a, there's no way this is real, way. A single dad barely surviving with just own a kid was already a war. How could someone purposely date someone with 5? He thought Jason was messing with him. Trying to lighten his stress. Trying to push him into the world he completely gave up on the night his wife died. But Friday came anyway. And now Ryan stood outside the small, cozy, dim, lit steakhouse on the corner of Willow Avenue, staring through the glass wondering why in the world he even agreed to this. His daughter, little Emma, was at his sister's house for the night. He could have just stayed home. Ordered pizza. Watched Blue reruns. Slept early. But something inside him whispered this time was different. He adjusted the collar of his shirt, inhaled deeply, and stepped inside. The restaurant smelled like grilled rosemary steak and warm garlic butter. The kind of scent that once felt like date night, and now felt like DAG view and danger all at once. He checked his watch. 8:02 p.m. He was late by 2 minutes. But she wasn't there. He slid into a booth near the back, facing the entrance. He wasn't nervous. He was terrified. What if he wasn't ready? What if he couldn't do this again? What if he ruined this before it even began? He rubbed his thumb across the inside of his palm. The same way he always did when panic tried to suffocate him. And then he heard the door open. He looked up. And froze. She walked in wearing jeans, a simple black t-shirt, tied back hair, minimal makeup, and a posture that said battle, discipline, confidence, and pain all lived inside her at the same time. She didn't look like someone trying to impress. She looked like someone who had lived enough to not care what anyone thought anymore. She approached the hostess and said politely, "I'm meeting someone, blind date." The hostess pointed almost immediately in his direction. She turned, and her eyes landed on him, and she smiled gently. Not flirtatious. Not calculated. Not guarded. More like, life has crushed me too. She walked toward the table, extended her hand, and said with a quiet voice filled with unexpected warmth, "You must be Ryan. I'm Captain Leela Henderson." He blinked. Captain, Jason forget to mention that part. He stood up quickly and shook her hand. Her grip was direct, firm, military, no hesitation. He felt small somehow. But safe but confused. "You're really a soldier?" he asked, almost before he could stop himself. She nodded, sitting down. "Army, deployment rotation. Got back 3 months ago. Ain't 5 kids, 5, she replied casually, 4 biological, 1 adopted. All chaos." There was no sarcasm in her tone, no guilt, no apology, just fact. He swallowed hard. So Jason wasn't joking. "No," she said softly. He wasn't. The waiter approached. They both ordered water first. Almost like 2 people too used to controlling every variable before opening themselves to anything new. There was a silence for a moment. Not awkward. More like 2 storms analyzing each other quietly. Leela rested her forearms on the table. "Before we do this the normal date way, I'm going to tell you something up front. I am not here for games. I don't have time to date recreationally. I don't flirt as a hobby. I'm either here to build something real or I walk. I've already been through enough war, literal and emotional." He exhaled slowly. It felt like something inside his chest actually unclenched for the first time in years. "Same," he said. "Single dad?" she asked. He nodded. "Widower." Her eyes softened, not with pity, but recognition. "How old is she?" 6. "Funny," she said quietly. "My youngest is 6 too." He almost smiled. But behind their attempt at normal conversation there was something else happening. Something invisible. Something neither of them could logically explain. From the moment she sat across from him, there was a strange, silent gravity in the space between them. Not a romantic spark. Not instant attraction. Something heavier than that. 2 people who survived the worst parts of life, sitting across from each other, realizing they weren't alone in their battle scars. The waiter returned. They ordered food. And then the conversation slowly changed from quiet to raw honesty neither was prepared for. She talked about the nights she slept inside foreign sandstorms with gunfire echoing in the dark. He talked about the nights he slept on the floor next to his daughter's bed. After she would wake screaming from nightmares, afraid her mother would disappear again. She talked about leadership. He talked about guilt. She talked about fighting death. He talked about living after death. And somewhere between steak bites and silent pauses, he stopped believing this was just a date. This felt like two souls being rebuilt in real time. But then, just when he started to relax, laugh, breathe, her phone suddenly vibrated. She checked the screen. Her face changed instantly. She stood up slowly, chest rising, panic flooding her eyes. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I have to leave. Right now." He stood too. "What happened?" She looked at him like this was the moment she feared might ruin everything before it even began. "It's my kids," she said, voice trembling. "There's an emergency." Ryan didn't even think before speaking. "Do you want me to drive you?" he asked. Leela hesitated for a second. Like she wasn't sure if she had the right to lean on anyone yet. Like she wasn't used to the idea of someone stepping in, someone offering help without expecting anything in return. She swallowed, nodded once, and whispered, "Yes. Please." They rushed out of the restaurant and into his truck. The cold night air felt sharper now, tighter, like the universe had twisted the atmosphere to match the anxiety flooding through both of them. As soon as they buckled in, she put the phone on speaker. A teenage girl's voice broke through instantly. "Mum, it's bad. Really bad. Sam can't breathe. He was wheezing and now he says his chest burns." Ryan immediately recognized that panic the way a voice cracks when fear infects every breath. He had heard that tone in his own daughter's voice before. He pulled out of the parking lot fast. This wasn't a date anymore. This was mission, respond mode. "Is he allergic to something?" Leela asked into the speaker. "Yes, dust." The boys were wrestling with pillows and the zipper broke and feathers went everywhere and... "Mom. He keeps grabbing his chest." "Use the inhaler on the counter," Leela said sharply. "The orange one." "2 puffs, I did." It didn't work. Ryan's grip tightened on the wheel. "ER, he said to her softly. "ER, she confirmed. Her voice was calm, military-grade calm, but her eyes were pure fear. He accelerated. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "No," she whispered. "Not this kid. Not this trauma again. I can't lose another one." He didn't pry. Something inside her sentence hinted at a landmine he instinctively respected. Some tragedies have depth in silence. When they reached her house, a modest 2-story home with chalk scribbles all over the driveway, 3 kids were on the porch, panicking, crying, pacing. One was holding a flashlight toward the driveway, like a desperate lighthouse trying to guide help to shore. She jumped out immediately. A little boy, maybe 9, was sitting on the ground gripping his chest, gasping unevenly, eyes wide with terror. Ryan couldn't stop himself. He hurried beside them. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, kneeling. "We're taking you to the hospital right now, okay? Keep your eyes on me. You're not alone. You're safe." Leela carried the boy into the back seat of the truck herself. The oldest daughter, maybe 14, jumped in the passenger seat without waiting to be invited. Her voice shook. "Mom, I called my aunt but she's not answering." Ryan glanced in the mirror. "It's all right. I'll drive. Just keep reassuring your brother." Calm voice helps keep his breathing steady. They sped toward the emergency room, and in that frantic 12-minute drive, something invisible formed inside that truck. Not romance, not bonding. Something heavier, stronger, primal survival partnership. When they crashed through the ER doors, nurses immediately rushed them inside, because the wheezing was severe enough to bypass triage. Ryan stood in the hallway with Leela and her daughter while doctors hooked the boy to monitors, got nebulizer treatment running, and ordered medication. Leela stood completely still. But her jaw was shaking. Her hands clasped together, knuckles whitening, like a soldier trying to hold herself together in a domestic battlefield, where bullets weren't metal. They were possibilities of tragedy. Ryan gently spoke. "You're safe, he's in the right place. They're doing exactly what needs to be done." She inhaled slowly. "I hate hospitals," she whispered. "Me too." She turned her head toward him, just slightly. "How long ago?" 2 years, he murmured. "Car accident. Instant, no goodbye." Her eyes dimmed not with pity but knowing. "My husband," she whispered back, "died overseas. Mortar blast, no warning, no final call." The two stood in silence after that, 2 strangers. 2 single parents, 2 graves carved inside their chests. After about 40 minutes, the doctor returned. He's responding. He's doing better. Relief collapsed through her body so fast she had to hold the chair to stay upright. The kids back home rushed to the group text with relieved voice notes. The oldest daughter finally exhaled and leaned her back on the wall, covering her face as she cried silently. Leela turned to Ryan slowly. You didn't have to come, but you did. He didn't answer right away. Because no combination of words felt remotely appropriate. So instead he said simply, neither of us should ever be alone during emergencies again. She blinked at that line, like it pierced something she'd kept locked for too long. This wasn't a romantic sentence. This was a war survivor sentence. When they finally drove back to her house, she thanked him again. The kids hugged their mom. The teenager gave him a shy, grateful wave. Before he left, Leela stepped closer. I'm not used to people staying when things get messy, she said quietly. He held her gaze. I don't run when things get real. She nodded slowly, memorizing that. Then she whispered the sentence that would alter everything yet again. Tomorrow I want you to meet all of them. All 5. For real this time. He paused. The old Ryan would have panicked. But now something in him wanted to step forward. I'll be here. He promised. Then he drove away into the night. His heart pounding not from fear, but from something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Possibility. The next morning felt like a new season was starting inside him. Not a new day, a new chapter. Ryan woke earlier than usual, before the alarm, before his daughter stirred. Before his thoughts turned into the usual noise that made mornings feel like battles before coffee. For the first time in years, he felt anticipation. Emma came out of her room rubbing her eyes, hair messy, dragging her stuffed unicorn by the tail. You're smiling, she said suspiciously, like that itself was a rare sighting worth documenting. Am I? He asked. She nodded dramatically. Yes. And that means something happened. He didn't know how to explain last night to a 6-year-old. But children have the most powerful radar for emotional shifts. They feel everything before adults even articulate it. He knelt to her level. I met someone new, he said softly. Someone with kids. And we're going to see them later. Emma blinked hard. Twice. She has kids. Yes, how many? 5. Then Emma froze. Then her mouth made the exact shape of cartoon shock. Fefwum. She grabbed her unicorn tighter. That's like a school. He laughed despite himself. Yeah. Kenda. She thought deeply for a moment, then leaned in closer and whispered, you're not replacing mommy, right? His smile faded. His eyes softened. No, never. Nobody could ever replace her. Emma nodded. Because deep down, she already knew. But she also sensed that this was different. Not threat. Not betrayal. Just life trying to give them new shapes. Later that afternoon, when they pulled into Leela's driveway, the chalk scribbles were still there. But now they looked like life markers, chaos markers, memory markers. The front door burst open before he even turned off the engine. 5 kids of completely different heights, ages, energies, and wavelengths ran out like a stampede of humanity. A teenage girl with a calm leadership aura. A boy around 11 who looked suspicious but protective. A boy around 9, the one from last night, who now stood healthier, smiling weakly. A hyper little girl around 7 who talked before words fully formed. And a tiny boy around 6 with toy soldiers in each hand. Emma froze, and Ryan froze. But Lila walked out right behind them, hands on hips, laughing at the chaos like a general surveying her troops. This, she said with exhausted pride, is Deployment Unit Bravo 6. The kids formed a line dramatically. The teenager rolled her eyes. The younger ones giggled. Then Lila looked at Ryan and Emma. And this is Ryan and Emma. Today is Peace Treaty Day. The kids immediately cheered like this was an official diplomatic event. One of the boys stepped forward and whispered to Ryan with dead, serious intensity. What broke 3 microwaves last year? Just warning you, we get experimental. Ryan blinked. Emma grabbed his leg in absolute fear. Leela clapped once and the chaos scattered. Kids running to show Legos, others rushing to show drawings. One kid dragging Emma inside to show her dolls. It was overwhelming, loud, messy, chaotic. But, not ugly, not frightening, it was alive. And Ryan hadn't felt surrounded by this much raw life since before his wife died. Inside the house looked like a hybrid between a playground, a cafeteria, a war base, and a kindergarten craft museum. Crayon drawings everywhere. Army medals mounted on walls. A framed picture of their dad in uniform, smiling, sat on a shelf next to 5 tiny handprints painted in different colors. Ryan paused there. Lila noticed. That's him, she said quietly. Staff Sergeant Cole Henderson. He looks like a hero. Ryan murmured. He was. The kids suddenly interrupted by dragging him and Emma outside to the backyard, where a half-built tree fort stood like a monument of chaotic sibling collaboration. We started this last summer, the oldest explained. Mom said we need a project that keeps us busy instead of breaking appliances. So did it work? Ryan asked. No, she replied instantly. We still break appliances. But the fort is cool. Emma laughed. The first free laugh he heard since she lost her mother. He looked toward Lila. She stood at the porch, watching him interacting with her kids. Watching her kids interacting with him and Emma, and her face wasn't smiling. It was hopeful in a way she was afraid to allow herself to fully believe in. Later that evening, when the sun dipped orange behind the rooflines, and the wind turned softer, and the chaos settled enough for everyone to breathe, Ryan found himself sitting outside with Lila alone while the kids built tiny soldier bases in the backyard dirt. She leaned back slightly against the chair. I'm gonna ask you a question, she said quietly. And I need you to answer honestly. Even if the answer is no. He nodded. Do you think you could actually be part of something this big? This loud? This complicated? Because this isn't romantic dinner dating. This is life at war speed. Ryan stared at the kids for a long moment. He saw grief inside each of them too. He saw love disguised under noise. He saw pain tangled with laughter. He saw survival in every messy movement of their little hands. He exhaled. I think I'm tired of being careful with life, he whispered. I think I want the chaos. She held his gaze. Hard. What if it breaks you? What if, he said, voice steady, it rebuilds me too. Her eyes glistened. Not tears, but impact. Like that sentence landed somewhere inside her chest she didn't expect anyone to reach. Before she could reply, the 11-year-old boy yelled from the yard. G-Wise! We need backup. We accidentally buried Emma's unicorn under mud, and now she's screaming like a dragon. Chaos exploded again. And both adults stood up fast, rushing inside, bite-side. Just like they had last night. Not as strangers, but as a beginning. That night changed something permanent. Something subtle but undeniable. Because from that day forward, Ryan and Emma didn't just occasionally visit Lila and her family. They became part of the noise, part of the routine, part of the healing. Dinners became loud overlapping conversations. Mornings became cereal bowl debates. Saturdays became woodcutting and fort building. Sundays turned into grocery cart races at Walmart with 6 kids who never agreed on a brand of cereal, but always agreed they needed ice cream to negotiate peace. It was madness. But it was the most meaningful madness Ryan had ever experienced. There were still moments when the world felt like it was spinning too fast. When guilt whispered that happiness felt like betrayal. That moving forward felt like erasing the past. Those were the nights he would quietly sit in his truck, before walking inside, breathing slow, grounding himself, remembering his wife's laugh, her voice, her promise. You keep living, even or don't. Yuki knew, and way deeper than logic, that she would have wanted this. Lila had her own ghosts. He learned that slowly. Not through dramatic confessions, but through small cracks that revealed themselves in ordinary hours. Sometimes when the youngest boy ran too fast near the road, she would freeze, breathing sharp as if she saw a mortar blast in her mind. Sometimes when fireworks popped in the neighborhood, she would instinctively cover her head first before everyone else processed it. Sometimes when she opened letters from the VI, her jaw would clench like every envelope carried another version of pain she had to financially justify to the world. Ryan never pushed her to open up, but one evening, after the kids had gone to bed and the house fell into that rare silence that is almost holy in large families, she sat beside him on the couch, staring at nothing, her voice barely audible. I wasn't there when he died, she whispered. And sometimes I convince myself it means I failed him. Ryan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gently reached over and placed his hand over hers. You served next to him. You survived next to him. That isn't failure. That's the kind of loyalty most people only pretend to understand. Her eyes watered. Just for a few seconds. Then she wiped them like soldiers do. Quick, minimal, unannounced. This wasn't a relationship built on romance first. It was being built on shared war. 2 different wars, same emotional battleground. People whispered. Neighbors talked. Even his own sister pulled him aside one afternoon and asked in half concern, half disbelief, are you sure this isn't too much? CX kids, a veteran widow, Don't you think this is too complicated? Ryan smiled. Maybe complicated is exactly what understands me. Simplicity never did. Word spread at Emma's school too. She suddenly became the girl who had 5 almost step siblings, which made her instantly interesting in first grade. Kids asked questions. Teachers raised eyebrows. One mom even jokingly said, "So you basically jumped from single dad to instant sitcom." But Emma didn't mind the teasing. Because inside she felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died. Belonging. And Leela's kids slowly began to trust him too. Not all at once. Not loudly. Quiet trust, the kind that builds in small increments. The teenager started seeking his advice about science projects. The 11-year-old asked him if he knew how to fix a broken skateboard truck. The 9-year-old offered him a handful of Pokémon cards like it was an elite diplomatic peace trade. The 7-year-old girl kept trying to braid Emma's hair in 90 different ways. And the youngest boy, the 6-year-old, started leaving one of his toy soldiers in Ryan's truck every time he came over. "Just so you have backup," the boy said seriously. Ryan would return them each time, and a new one would appear the next day. One soldier at a time. One tiny silent message at a time. "You're becoming part of our army." And then came the night that would test this new fragile formation. They were all finishing dinner. Pasta, garlic bread. Messy table. Kids laughing about something that happened at recess. Leela's phone buzzed. She checked it absent-mindedly. But something in her face changed again. Her entire posture stiffened. She slowly lowered the phone, stared at the table, stared at the wall, stared through the air like she had just been pulled out of the present, and dragged into a reality she wasn't ready for. "What is it?" Ryan asked gently. She looked up. "It's the army," she whispered. "They want me to redeploy." The fork dropped out of Ryan's hand. Silence fell over the table. Even the kids froze. The older ones understood instantly. The younger ones sensed fear without context but still felt it. "How long?" he asked quietly. 9 months. Active combat region. They need experienced field leadership. He felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs. "And you're going?" he asked. She looked at him with eyes full of guilt and duty tangled like barbed wire. "It's not optional," she whispered. Emma grabbed his sleeve. The youngest boy grabbed his mother's hand. Ryan stared at Leela. This was bigger than heartbreak. Bigger than hesitation. Bigger than romance. This was war stepping back into their lives like a force of fate that refused to let them have peace without fight. She swallowed. Voice cracking for the first time since he met her. "Ryan, what if this ruins everything we were starting to build?" He stared back. And his voice was steady. "Then we're going to fight harder." But deep inside, he had no idea how. The next 2 weeks moved like slow-motion heartbreak. Paperwork, procedures, meetings, briefings, packing lists, deployment instructions. Every moment felt like a countdown. Leela tried to act normal for the kids. But even they felt the invisible pressure tightening the walls of their home. It was the kind of pressure that didn't scream. It hummed. Constantly. Heavily. Ryan tried to be their anchor. Not because he was obligated. But because leaving them alone to carry that weight would have destroyed him too. One night, after the kids fell asleep, Ryan found her sitting in the backyard alone at the unfinished tree fort. The same one they all dreamed of finishing together in the summer. She was looking at it like it was something sacred she wasn't allowed to complete. He sat next to her quietly. She didn't look at him. Her voice cracked lower than a whisper. "I'm terrified this time," she confessed. "Not of dying, not of the mission. I'm terrified of leaving them again when they finally started to breathe again." Ryan slowly reached out and placed his palm over hers. "Fear doesn't make you weak, Leela. Fear proves you actually care about what's at stake." She took a long shaky breath. "It's different now," she said. "I'm not the same woman who deployed before. I'm not just a soldier anymore, I'm a mother fighting 2 wars. One overseas and one inside my own chest. And for the first time ever, I don't want to go." That was the moment Ryan realized something powerful. Strength wasn't measured by who faced battle without fear. Strength was choosing to love again when fear said you shouldn't. The night before she left, the house felt like a silent museum of emotions nobody knew how to name. Her kids pretended to be brave for her. She pretended to be brave for them. And Ryan tried to hold everyone together while feeling like his own ribcage was collapsing inward. Emma stayed close to Ryan the whole night. As if she instinctively knew this wasn't just sadness. This was trauma removing stitches before they even healed. The younger kids made drawings for her to keep inside her deployment journal. Stick figures. Crayon rainbows. Little army tanks with hearts drawn on the side. The older ones wrote letters they tried to fold perfectly. Like precision paper origami, could hold their shaking hands steady. Ryan waited until everyone else had gone to bed before speaking to her alone. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. "I know you're used to being every role, leader, protector, shield. But this time you're not doing this without a support unit." She looked at him for a long time. Like she wasn't sure she deserved someone saying that. "Promise me," she whispered. Voice trembling, "You'll stay in their lives while I'm gone. Not because we were starting something. But because they trust you now. And trust is something they rarely give to anyone. If you disappear while I'm gone, it'll break more than just their routine." He stepped closer, eyes steady, voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere. Even if this is hard. Even if this hurts. Even if this tests all of us. I'll be here for them. Always." It was the first time she let tears fall without turning away. The next morning, when the army vehicle arrived to pick her up, the kids stood in a line in the driveway, holding hands like a human chain against the world. She hugged each one of them with a strength that wasn't human. It was survival strength. Mother strength. Soldier strength. Before she got in the vehicle, she leaned down and whispered into the youngest boy's ear. He nodded, eyes fierce, and saluted her. She then turned to Ryan. There were no romantic words. No dramatic speech, no confession. Just two broken souls holding eye contact long enough to say everything silently. "Come back. Stay safe. Don't make me regret trusting again." She stepped inside the vehicle. The door shut. The engine roared. And just like that she was gone. The kids stood there long after the taillights disappeared. Emma clung to Ryan's hand with both of hers. He knelt down to their level. Not as a visitor, but as someone stepping into a promise bigger than comfort. "Okay?" he said gently. "Here's what we're going to do. We are going to finish that tree fort. Every last piece. And when she comes home, she's going to walk into this yard and see something standing strong again. Just like she wants for all of you." Well, for the first time since the deployment order came, the oldest daughter actually smiled through her tears. "Mom loves that fort," she whispered. "She always said it's our metaphor of surviving chaos." Ryan nodded slowly. "Then we're going to survive it together." Days went by. Then weeks. The fort became their mission. Hammering, sawing, sanding, screws, paint, planning, problem solving, laughing, crying, trying again. Every nail they drove into that wood. Every line they painted. Every board they measured, was a silent letter to her. A message that life did not stop in her absence. A message that healing didn't freeze. A message that family was not something limited by DNA. And as months passed, Ryan realized something powerful and terrifying and beautiful all at once. He had already fallen. Not just for her, but for all of them. And that kind of love was the type that could destroy you or save you. There was no middle ground. There was only the risk you choose to take. And Ryan chose to risk everything. 9 months came and went like warping time. Some days felt endless. Some days slipped through his fingers like sand. News headlines every morning reminding him she was in danger. Deployment reports, civilians evacuated, casualty counts, regions shifting, nations negotiating. He lived in a constant state between hope and panic. But every evening he showed up at that house. He got kids to school. Helped with homework. Taught them how to fix bikes. Cooked dinners with whatever budget demanded. Broke arguments, mediated toy wars. Did late-night grocery runs when someone forgot cereal. Woke up at 3 a.m. when nightmares hit. He learned the chaos rhythms by heart. The teenager began calling him when she struggled with calculus questions. The 11-year-old started training with Ryan in the garage. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-up bar. Declaring he wanted to be tough like you and Mom. The 9-year-old started showing Emma gaming secrets and card combos like he was passing on military intel. The 7-year-old braided his hair once just to test technique on adult scalp. He still doesn't know how she convinced him to sit still for that. And the youngest. Every Friday, he'd add another toy soldier to that growing army in Ryan's truck. One day, months in, the youngest asked a question that hit him so hard it broke something and rebuilt it in the same second. "Are you our dad now? Or are you just borrowing us until Mom comes back?" Ryan knelt in front of him, voice thick, eyes stinging. "I don't borrow people I love. I stay. I'm here. Even when things get scary. Even when things feel broken. Even when life doesn't go the way we expect. I don't leave. Not ever." The boy nodded, and hugged him, and that was the moment the word, family, changed from a concept, to a living breathing thing. Then one spring afternoon, after the last screw finally went into the final plank of the tree fort, Ryan stood back with the kids and looked at what they had built. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't symmetrical. It wasn't professional, but it stood strong, solid, weather-proof, war-proof, life-proof, just like they were trying to become. Emma looked up at him, eyes glowing with the same pride she once only reserved for memories of her mom. "She's gonna love it," she whispered. And he believed that with his whole chest. The day she returned arrived without warning. He was in the kitchen plating grilled cheese sandwiches, because apparently 6 kids treat grilled cheese like a sacred ritual meal. A knock at the front door, normal knock, not dramatic, not cinematic, but the kind of knock that splits reality in half. The oldest daughter opened it, screamed. Then 5 children exploded toward the doorway with more velocity than physics should allow. Ryan froze. Then his chest ignited. Leela stood in the doorway in uniform, duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Dusty boots still caked with foreign earth, but her eyes were soft again, alive again, home again. She fell to her knees as her children drowned her in tears and arms and voices that wouldn't form complete words because emotion hijacked language completely. Ryan stood back at first. He wanted this to be theirs first. This reunion was sacred ground he would never take from them. But then she slowly stood, walked toward him. Step by step, eyes locked to his like every moment she survived out there. She survived with the thought of this moment pulling her home. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She just placed her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart, like she needed to confirm something real existed beneath her fingers. "My kids," she whispered, voice breaking as emotion finally flooded through all her armor, "are still whole." He nodded. "You kept them alive," she cried softly. "You held them together. I don't know how to thank you for that." "You don't have to," he whispered. "I needed them just as much as they needed me." She leaned her forehead against his, the kind of contact that wasn't romantic first. No. It was grateful. It was communion. It was 2 wars folding into one piece. The kids grabbed both of them suddenly, dragging her outside toward the backyard. Talking over each other. Screaming excitedly. Tripping over explanations. Look what we built. All of us, for Yao." She stepped into the backyard, saw the tree fort, and her breath shattered, not like shock, not like disbelief, but like someone finally seeing visible proof that hope wasn't delusion. She walked toward it, fingers shaking as she touched the wood. "You built this?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Together." She turned to him, eyes overflowing. "That's not a fort," she whispered. "That's a promise." And in that moment, everyone understood the metaphor perfectly, without anyone having to say it. Trauma didn't win. Loneliness didn't win. Abandonment didn't win. Life only breaks you permanently if you stop building. And they didn't stop. Not one nail. Not one breath. The kids climbed the fort like a victory monument. Emma sat beside the youngest, who proudly placed one final toy soldier on the top railing, like planting a flag in conquered territory. Ryan took Lila's hand gently, no rush, no fear, no hesitation. She intertwined her fingers through his, not as a test, not to borrow strength, but to share it, equal, present, alive. Their story wasn't 2 broken souls trying to fill empty spaces. Their story was 2 wounded warriors realizing healing wasn't about replacing what was lost.